With the recent discount in the PlayStation VR2 and the upcoming compatibility with PCs, I wanted to share a path to overcoming motion sickness in virtual reality and how to become comfortable in that setting. Motion sickness in VR, often referred to as VR sickness, can be an unpleasant experience for many users. It occurs when there's a disconnect between the visual motion you see and the physical motion your body feels. This guide is going to help provide practical tips and strategies to help minimize or overcome motion sickness in VR and offer some suggestions on some games that will help you get started and make your progress into the game that you're seeking to play. Before we get into the cure, I want to let you know what you're actually looking at. So, visual discrepancy is part of the cause, and it's when your eyes perceive motion in the visual environment that your body doesn't feel, and it can cause confusion in the brain, leading to nausea. Latency, or delays between the head movements and corresponding visual information that your eyes are seeing, can also exacerbate that symptom. And the field of view being too wide can often cause discomfort, especially in fast moving scenes. And then you'll also get a sense of motion sickness that can be triggered by rapid changes in speed that can further cause the problem. And the symptoms include nausea, dizziness, sweating, disorientation, and eye strain. The first thing you want to do, just like any exercise, and this is kind of a learning experience and an exercise, is to start slow. And by slow, that means sessions lasting about 5 to 10 minutes and then gradually increasing as you become more accustomed. And also, you'll want to choose VR experiences that have minimal movement, such as seated or stationary games. When I first got into it, right away I was excited and got into Ace Combat 7, and I played for about 10 minutes and then I was sick for about 8 hours because of it. So start slow. If you start to feel sick, stop right away and give yourself a little bit of break, and then come back to it as you feel up to the task. The first type of game I would suggest you try is a still game. This lets you get accustomed to the environment without moving around too much. I played a lot of Beat Saber when it first came out, and that's a nice still game. The blocks are coming at you. It's fast-paced in that you're moving the swords around, but you're in control of the environment and it's not dancing around you. Plus, it's a dark area. Another game that's more like an action figure type of game is Moss, where you're playing with a controller and you see the little character running around. I don't have it on the PlayStation 5. I played it on PlayStation 4, but Towers and Powers reminds me of that as well, where you actually can pick up various characters and place them into towers, and this changes the defensive mechanism of the tower. But it's a nice environment that you can kind of look around. You're not moving in the environment. The environment's static, so it doesn't overwhelm you so much and you don't suffer from so much motion sickness. There's also an escape room game, which is a lot of fun. It's nice and dark, so it helps from getting overstimulated. And that one you're moving from point to point, so it's pushing a little further ahead, but you're bouncing from point to point. You're not walking, and that helps. Another game is Five Nights at Freddy's, which that's a little bit. It can be startling because it is it's a horror game, but you're not going to necessarily get motion sickness, but you may not want to play too long anyway. And most of those rounds only last about 5 minutes, so if you're okay with some jump scares, it's a good option. The next type of game I would suggest are what I would call track type games, and it's games like Pistol Whip, or they haven't ported it over to PSVR2, but Astrobot Rescue Mission. And by track games, it's almost like you're riding on a track, and it moves slowly, so it gives you a little bit of movement, so it lets you get into that world a little bit without overwhelming you. And on the VR2, Pistol Whip is a really good option. It's similar to Beat Saber in that it's a music game, but instead of using swords, you're using pistols, and it gives you a nice taste of motion without blasting you with it. And you're not changing directions, so it's not going to make you sick, or it'll help you get used to it without getting you too sick. And another great option there is Walkabout Mini Golf. And you may think, mini golf isn't that exciting, but this puts you in really unique environments. You get a lot of vertical views and things like that, so you can kind of look over the edge and see that depth. But the movement can be slow. And the other thing with Walkabout is if you push the stick up while pointing up, it actually, one of the mechanisms of the game is it'll let you fly. And that can give you a taste of some of the more advanced movements in VR without, breaking the game. Like, you don't need to do it, but you can get a taste of it, and it's just a nice transition game. If you've already subscribed to my channel, there's a good chance you're into racing, and step 3 is where I would put the racing games. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love if you would. It's something I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so anyone that joins definitely helps. But racing games, you're typically trying to move forward, so it eliminates a couple of the motions. Once you get into some tracks that have some elevation, that adds a couple more motions, and that's a little bit more nauseating, but you can find flatter tracks. You're also, you're going to introduce moving left and right, but again, you're trying to move forward. So the big caution with racing games is you don't want to look out the side windows. You want to look in the direction of travel at all times. And it's tempting when you first get into the game, you want to look around because it's a nice, pretty environment, and you want to see what's out there. But you don't do that in a real car, and you shouldn't do it in VR especially, because it's going to cause motion sickness quick. There is a kart racing game that's similar to Mario Kart available in VR, and I actually was thinking about buying this, but part of the mechanics of the game is holding the controller and actually aiming around at the other drivers. And I think that's going to be a game that causes a lot of motion sickness with you looking outside of the direction of travel. So this is where I'd put racing games. The next level, and I almost consider this next game to be a transitional game, but that's first-person shooters. And with that, I suggest Sierra Squad before anything else. You can get other games, but it's going to be a steeper learning curve. So Sierra Squad is a single-player. You can play multiplayer co-op, but it's mostly a single-player game. You're not fighting other real people, so you can move a little bit more slowly and a little bit more directly, and it's more of an arcade shooter. It reminds me of Time Crisis, where you can kind of back away, get cover. It adds in the VR option of loading ammo and shoot very similar to a real gun, so it's a nice game, but it's not as intense as other first-person shooters. Another good single-player option is Red Matter or Red Matter 2, which is more of a puzzle style, but still in that first-person environment. You also have a jetpack, so there's an up and down motion as well. So it's something that can get you more comfortable with the different movements in virtual reality without being stuck in combat. And then you can move on to Pavlov, which is player versus player, so it's a lot more jerky movement, it's a lot of quicker movements, and one of the things you can actually do to kind of combat this is when you're standing in place playing the game, you can kind of bend your legs and walk in place, and that will actually kind of trick your brain into expecting the movement, so it helps alleviate some of that motion sickness before you actually become really comfortable. The final level that I'm aware of to get comfortable in VR is the flight level, and that's when you're actually piloting an aircraft and you have the ability to do barrel rolls, backflips, flight inversion. The closer you get to the ground, the more nauseating it is, so be aware of that. But I have No Man's Sky on my console, and honestly, I don't really mess with it in VR that much just because it's nauseating even for me, and I play VR every day. So you may not get to that level. That's fine. Just get to where you're comfortable and play where you're comfortable. But it's something to keep in mind because it's real tempting to look into those games. One of the ones I was the most excited about when I had the first PlayStation VR was Ace Combat, and it made me really sick. I saw they only had 3 levels available, and at first I thought that was ridiculous. I never got past the second one. It made me sick. I made a few attempts at it, and then I hung it up. That was good for me. So the biggest advice overall is take your time. Uh, Increase your time in VR gradually. There are things within some games where it'll close off your field of vision, which can help you become more comfortable. They have snap movements. I don't really care for that, but it can help you. Instead of having the flowing change, it'll just snap into place. So pay attention to your body. Don't push yourself beyond. Once you start to feel it, shut it down. Because otherwise, if you start to push on it, it increases even when you turn the system off. Like if you start feeling sick, once you shut down, it's not over. It's gonna you'll probably get a little bit more sick. So if you try to push yourself through it, you're going to get yourself in a bad spot. But then there are also things such as you want to make sure fans are on you initially to keep you cool, stay hydrated, and you can do things like take ginger as a supplement to help you with nausea as well. Anyway, I hope this is helpful to you to stepping into the world of VR. Don't sell your system right away if you've been a little bit nauseous, and give yourself a chance to get accustomed to it. It's just like hitting the gym. You're not going to put up the big weight the first day. Give it some time and you'll get there. Thank you, and we'll catch you in the next one.